The night Mark got lost in the forest, search and rescue teams couldn't find him. But someone did find him, and they were the cubs whose lives he had saved years ago. In the deep forests of Montana, near Glacier National Park, firefighter Mark Thompson had been serving for 12 years. This experienced 35-year-old firefighter specialized in fighting forest fires. Mark not only extinguished fires, but also took great risks to rescue animals trapped in blazes. In August 2018, the largest forest fire in 20 years broke out in Montana. Due to drought and strong winds, the flames spread rapidly, burning thousands of hectares of forest land. Mark and his team fought the flames day and night without rest. On the third day of the fire, Mark's team was working in the Wildwood area. The flames were spreading so fast that many animals couldn't find time to escape. Mark learned from a radio message from the helicopter that there were trapped animals about 2 kilometers ahead. "Mark, southeast direction. There's a large group of animals in the rocky area. The flames have surrounded them," said pilot Jim. Without hesitation, Mark turned to his team. "I'm going there. You hold the fire line." Team leader Dave looked at Mark with concern. "Mark, that area is very dangerous. The flames could engulf that place at any moment." But Mark was determined. "Dave, innocent lives are dying there. I can't return without rescuing them." Mark set off toward the dangerous area with water tanks and rescue equipment. The smoke was so thick that it was impossible to see 5 meters ahead. He advanced relying only on GPS, occasionally following coordinates from the helicopter. Half an hour later, when Mark reached the rocky area, he encountered a surprising sight. Among the large rocks, 8 wolf cubs were huddled together in fear, waiting. The cubs were about 3 to 4 months old and appeared to be separated from their mothers. When Mark approached the wolf cubs, he saw how frightened and helpless they were. The flames were getting closer every passing minute. If he didn't act immediately, these innocent cubs would burn. "Okay, little ones, I won't harm you. I'm going to get you out of here," Mark said in a gentle voice. The wolf cubs were very scared at first, but Mark's calm demeanor somewhat reassured them. Mark pulled out a large nylon bag and began taking the cubs in one by one. The cubs were very light, all weakened from hunger and dehydration. After putting them in the bag, Mark quickly moved toward the safe zone. The return journey was very difficult. The flames were now threatening Mark as well. Once, a tree fell right in front of him, and Mark barely escaped. The cubs in the bag didn't make a sound from fear. 2 hours later, when Mark reached the safe zone, he was completely exhausted. When he opened the bag, he felt great relief seeing that all 8 cubs were alive. The cubs were still very frightened, but they were now safe. Mark immediately prepared water and food for the cubs. He called the Montana Wildlife Association, requesting professional care for the cubs. Dr. Lisa Chen, a wildlife veterinarian, immediately came to the scene. "Mark, these cubs are very lucky. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't be alive right now," said Dr. Chen while examining the cubs. The cubs were dehydrated and weak, but had no serious injuries. In the following days, the cubs received treatment at the Montana Wildlife Center. Mark visited the center every day and looked after the cubs. Over time, the cubs got used to Mark and began wagging their tails and showing affection when they saw him. 6 weeks later, the cubs had completely recovered and were ready to be released into the wild. Mark would never forget this moment. After the cubs were taken out of their cages one by one and released into the forest, they wandered around for a while, then ran into the forest. "Live a beautiful life, my little friends," Mark said as the cubs disappeared into the forest. That day, Mark felt he had done the most meaningful work of his life. 5 years passed. Mark was still serving as a firefighter and continued to rescue animals. The cubs from back then had now become fully grown wolves and formed their own packs. In October 2023, Mark decided to go camping in the forest with family friends. Together with his wife Jennifer and 8-year-old son Tommy, they set up camp in a beautiful area inside Glacier Park. On the second day, Mark went hiking alone in the forest to take photographs. As an experienced nature lover, he had taken his GPS and emergency equipment with him. But nature sometimes creates unpredictable surprises. While Mark was taking beautiful landscape photos, a thick fog suddenly descended. Visibility dropped to a few meters, and Mark lost his direction. His GPS couldn't get a signal due to the fog either. After walking for hours, Mark realized he was completely lost. The sun was setting, and the weather was getting cold quickly. Mark knew what to do in an emergency, but this time the conditions were very harsh. At midnight, Mark was shivering from cold, trying to shelter under a tree. He was trying to communicate with his family via radio, but couldn't get a signal. His situation was getting worse. The next morning, when Jennifer realized Mark hadn't returned, she immediately called the search and rescue team. The Montana search and rescue team began searching for Mark with helicopters and dogs. Intensive search efforts were conducted for 2 days. Dozens of volunteers, drones, rescue dogs, everything was tried. But no trace of Mark could be found. His family was going crazy with worry. On the third night, Mark was about to faint from hunger and cold. His water had run out. He had no food left. His body temperature had dropped dangerously. If he couldn't get through this night, he might not see morning. Just then, eyes glowing from the darkness appeared. Mark was scared at first, but the approaching silhouettes seemed familiar. These were wolves, and they weren't alone. When the wolves approached Mark, they didn't show aggressive behavior. On the contrary, they began circling around him as if they recognized him. Mark wondered if these wolves were the cubs he had rescued 5 years ago. The pack leader, a large male wolf, approached Mark and smelled his face. Then he turned around and started walking. The other wolves seemed to be waiting for Mark to follow them. Mark placed his last hope in the wolves. He stood up and began following the wolves. The wolves walked at a slow pace, checking whether Mark could keep up. After walking for about an hour, the wolves led Mark to a small stream. Mark, who was about to die of thirst, had found clean water. He immediately began drinking water. The wolves didn't stop. They continued to lead Mark further away to a safe area. Toward morning, Mark found himself on a familiar trail. This was the main road near the camp. When Mark turned around to thank the wolves, they had already disappeared into the depths of the forest. Only faint howling sounds from afar showed they were still there. An hour later, when Mark reached the campsite, his family's joy was indescribable. Jennifer hugged Mark while crying. Tommy was very happy to see his father. "The wolves saved me," Mark said while telling what had happened. At first, no one believed it, but Mark insisted on saying the same thing. When the search and rescue team arrived, Mark showed them the scene. Wolf tracks were clearly visible in the snow. The tracks continued from where Mark had gotten lost to the safe area. Dr. Lisa Chen was very moved when she remembered the incident from 5 years ago. "Mark, this is really possible. Wolves have perfect memories. They remembered you and showed their gratitude. This incident caused a great stir in Montana. Local newspapers and television channels featured the story as headlines. Mark gave interviews about wolves' intelligence and loyalty. When I rescued those cubs, I was just doing my job. But they didn't forget that. This is the greatest lesson nature teaches us," Mark said in an interview. Months passed. Mark and his family still camp in that area. Sometimes they hear wolf howls from afar. Mark knows they're protecting him. One evening, while Mark was sitting alone by the fire, familiar eyes gleamed from the forest. The wolves were watching him from afar. Mark greeted them, and the wolves answered by howling. "Thank you, my friends," Mark whispered. As if understanding, the wolves howled one last time and disappeared into the forest. This story showed how strong the special bond between Mark and the wolves was. In nature, love and gratitude could transcend interspecies boundaries. Mark was no longer just doing his job in forest fires, but acting knowing that every animal was valuable, because the cubs he had rescued that day had saved his own life years later. In the Montana forests, this story is still being told. Firefighter Mark and his wolf friends live in memories as the most beautiful example of mutual loyalty. Jennifer and Tommy are proud of Mark's courage. When Tommy grows up, he wants to rescue animals like his father. Mark tells him, "Every living being is valuable, Tommy. When you help them, they help you too." Last summer, Mark camped in that area again with his family. This time he didn't get lost, but he still saw his wolves. From afar, at a safe distance, but they were there. Dr. Lisa Chen published this incident in scientific journals. Her research on wolf intelligence and memory was supported by Mark's story. Wolves are animals capable of forming complex social relationships. Mark's story proves they have feelings of gratitude, said Dr. Chen. Today, Mark still works as a firefighter, but now he's not just a firefighter, he is a protector and friend of nature's children. In every forest fire, in every rescue operation, Mark remembers the wolves from that night. He doesn't forget the gratitude, loyalty, and love in their eyes. In the deep forests of Montana, the friendship that began between a firefighter and 8 wolf cubs will last for years, because true friendship knows no interspecies boundaries. Mark's story teaches humanity a great lesson. Love and respect shown to nature eventually finds its return. Sometimes this return can be life-saving. The wolves that Mark saved taught him the most valuable lesson of his life. In nature, every act of kindness creates an eternal bond. Sometimes that bond can save your life when you need it most. Years have passed, but Mark still patrols the same forests. Sometimes he hears familiar howls in the distance. He knows his wolf friends are still there, still watching over him. Tommy, now older, often asks his father to tell the wolf story. Mark tells it every time, emphasizing the same message. Respect nature, son. It will respect you back. The Montana Wildlife Center has created a special exhibit about Mark and the wolves. Thousands of visitors come each year to learn about this incredible story of mutual rescue and lifelong friendship. Dr. Lisa Chen continues her research on wolf behavior, using Mark's story as a case study. She has documented similar incidents around the world, proving that animals can form lasting emotional bonds with humans who have helped them. Mark's fellow firefighters now call him Wolf Whisperer. He laughs at the nickname, but takes pride in it. He knows he has a special connection with the creatures of the forest. Every year on the anniversary of the rescue, Mark returns to the spot where he first found the cubs. He leaves flowers and says a quiet thank you to the forest. Sometimes, if he's lucky, he hears an answering howl carried on the wind. The story of Mark and his wolf pack has become legend in Montana. It's a reminder that kindness transcends species, that gratitude has no boundaries, and that the bonds we form with nature can last a lifetime. In a world where humans and wildlife often clash, Mark's story offers hope. It shows that with compassion and respect, we can build bridges between our worlds, and sometimes those bridges can save our lives. Dear friend, thank you for following this story to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Keep supporting us. Goodbye. See you in the next episodes.